I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I always believed that my marriage to Laura was solid, maybe even enviable. We had been together for over a decade, and to many, we were the golden couple. Laura was everything I had ever wanted: smart, beautiful, and fiercely independent. We had built a life around shared dreams: 2 kids, a cozy home in the suburbs, and plans for a comfortable retirement. We even hired a financial advisor, Mark, to help us make the best choices for our future. But something shifted. Looking back, I can see the signs, though I was too blind to notice at the time. The late nights at work became more frequent. The little business trips she talked about seemed to have no purpose. But I was busy too, juggling my job and our kids, and I trusted her implicitly. I wanted to believe she was just dedicated to her career. That all came crashing down one Friday night as I prepared for tax season. I was sifting through a stack of documents, organizing receipts, and gathering the year's financial statements. I came across her phone, which she had left on the kitchen counter. I had never been the snooping type, but curiosity got the best of me. I unlocked it with the passcode I had memorized: her birthday. The first thing I saw was a message from Mark. My heart sank as I read the flirty exchange, filled with inside jokes, playful banter, and something that made my stomach twist. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just us two." I felt a cold sweat break out as I scrolled through more messages. What shocked me wasn't just the romantic undertones, but the sheer audacity of it all. Here was our financial advisor, the man we trusted to help us plan our future, and he was entangled in a web of deceit with my wife, my Laura, the woman who always claimed to be so committed to our family. I felt rage bubbling up, mixed with disbelief and a crushing sense of betrayal. When she came home, I was waiting for her in the living room, my heart beating like a drum. I confronted her about the texts. The look on her face went from confusion to defensive indignation in an instant. I laid out my findings, showing her the messages that so clearly spelled out her infidelity. She tried to brush it off with feigned ignorance, claiming they were just jokes, harmless flirting, but I could see in her eyes that she was lying. "Come on, Laura, this isn't some innocent exchange. You're cheating on me," I shouted, feeling the anger and hurt swell within me. She shifted her weight, crossed her arms, and shot back. "You're overreacting. Mark was just being friendly. You know how he is, he's like that with everyone." I felt my blood boil. Friendly. It was painfully clear that what she was saying was a desperate attempt to minimize her actions, to deceive me further. I took a deep breath, trying to control my emotions. "Friendly? This isn't just friendship. This is betrayal, Laura. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." "Stop it," she snapped, her voice rising. "You don't get to accuse me of cheating. You're just being paranoid." I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand the weight of her actions. But instead, I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, was lost to me. As the confrontation unfolded, I realized I was teetering on the edge of something I didn't fully understand, caught in a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And the worst part, I still had to process all of this while dealing with the fallout of her betrayal. The kids were upstairs, blissfully unaware of the chaos unraveling below. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face? I felt trapped between the love I once had and the betrayal that now consumed me. I needed time to think. This was just the beginning of a long, painful journey I never anticipated embarking on. After the confrontation, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning as the reality of Laura's betrayal settled in. I kept replaying our conversations in my head, her words echoing like a haunting melody. I remembered the laughter we once shared, the plans we made, and the trust that felt unbreakable. Now it all felt tainted, broken beyond repair. In the days that followed, I was on autopilot. I went through the motions of work, barely keeping my head above water while my mind was consumed with thoughts of her and Mark. I couldn't shake the images of them together: the thought of my wife's lips on someone else's skin, the laughter they shared that should have been mine. I felt like a ghost in my own life, drifting through familiar spaces that now felt foreign. I decided to confront Laura again. I couldn't let this fester. I needed answers, the kind that would either bring me closure or plunge me deeper into despair. So one evening after the kids were asleep, I sat her down again. "Laura, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with pain. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine. "What is there to talk about? I've already told you it was nothing." "It was something. It was everything. I need to understand how this happened. What was it that made you turn to him?" I demanded, frustration bubbling to the surface. She sighed heavily, brushing her hair back in a nervous gesture. "You wouldn't understand. You're always so consumed with work and the kids. I felt alone. Mark was there for me when you were." I could feel the betrayal slice through me again, the blame. She was shifting the narrative, making me feel like the villain of our story. "You're saying it's my fault, because I work hard to provide for this family. That's not an excuse to cheat. Don't put this all on me. You don't know what it's like to feel neglected. You're so focused on everything else that you forget about me." Her defensiveness ignited my anger further. "You chose to go to him instead of talking to me. How is that fair? You could have communicated, but you chose betrayal." In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about her affair. It was about our entire relationship. We had let communication break down, and while I wasn't blameless in this, I felt utterly blindsided. "I loved you, Laura, and this is how you repay me," I said, my voice cracking as the hurt overwhelmed me again. She softened for just a moment, her eyes glistening with something resembling regret. "I didn't want it to happen, I swear. It just did." That admission hit me hard. It was both a confession and an excuse. Mix of truth and denial. I felt a part of me wanting to believe her, to find some way to reconcile my feelings, but the damage was done. I was left standing at the edge of a chasm, unsure of how to proceed. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in our home was palpable. The kids sensed something was off, but they were too young to understand. I put on a brave face, acting like everything was fine while my heart was breaking. I found solace in late-night conversations with friends who sympathized with my plight. I needed support, and they provided it, each one echoing the same sentiment. "You deserve better, man." But when I looked at Laura, the woman I had once adored, I was met with a mixture of anger and pity. She still insisted that the affair with Mark was a one-time mistake, a lapse in judgment that meant nothing. I wanted to believe her, but the truth was that the emotional scars were much deeper than I imagined. I started to plot my next move. I didn't want to jump into any rash decisions, but I knew I had to protect myself. I needed to gather evidence that would help me understand the full scope of her betrayal. I began keeping a journal, documenting everything: our conversations, her behavior, the small lies that began to pile up like debris after an avalanche. The more I wrote, the clearer it became that I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I felt a strange sense of empowerment as I committed my thoughts to paper. I was no longer a passive victim in my own life. I needed a plan. As the weeks went by, I became more determined to confront the reality of what had happened. I had to know if there was a way to salvage our marriage or if I was simply holding on to a ghost. The question loomed over me: could I forgive her? And more importantly, could I trust her again? Each day was a struggle, filled with an emotional seesaw that left me drained. I felt like I was teetering between hope and despair, unsure of where I would land. And I couldn't shake the thought of Mark, the man who had shattered my world. He had crossed a line that should never have been breached, and I was ready to find a way to take back control. Every time I thought of him, a fire ignited in my chest, fueling my resolve to seek justice, to make sure he understood the pain he had caused. As I navigated this turmoil, I realized I had to make a choice: either accept what had happened and try to rebuild, or take a stand and choose a different path. As I continued to process the whirlwind of emotions, I felt that the time had come to take decisive action. The anger I felt toward Mark was boiling beneath the surface, and I could no longer ignore it. I needed to confront him, to make him understand the impact of his betrayal. He had invaded my life, and I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done, not just to me, but to my family. I began planning how I would approach this confrontation. I envisioned a meeting where I could challenge him directly, face to face. After doing some digging, I discovered Mark's office hours, and even learned that he had a meeting with another client on a Tuesday afternoon. I decided that would be the perfect time to catch him off guard. That Tuesday I arrived at his office early, my heart racing with anticipation and anger. My plan was simple: confront him, express my feelings, and demand he acknowledge the pain he had caused. I walked in and the receptionist greeted me with a confused look. "Hi, I'm here to see Mark," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice came out strained. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, glancing at her computer. "No, but it's important," I insisted. "I really need to talk to him." She hesitated but finally relented, buzzing me through to his office. As I walked down the hallway, I could feel the air thickening around me, each step bringing me closer to my confrontation. I reached his office door and knocked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Come in," I heard him call. I opened the door and there he sat, comfortably leaning back in his chair, his glasses perched on his nose. He looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to confusion when he saw me. "Hey, how can I help you?" he said, his tone casual, as if he had no idea what he had done to me. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks and I took a deep breath. "We need to talk, Mark, about you and Laura." His demeanor changed instantly. He sat up straighter, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" I stepped into the office and shut the door behind me. "You know exactly what I mean. I found the messages. I know you're sleeping with my wife." His face paled and for a moment he seemed at a loss for words. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, attempting to deflect. "Then tell me what it is," I shot back, my voice rising. "You're the one who promised to help us plan our future, and instead you're destroying it. How could you do this to me, to us?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defensively. "It's not my fault your marriage was struggling. Laura was vulnerable. I was only what, being a predator, taking advantage of her." I interrupted, my anger boiling over. "You took an oath of trust when you became our financial advisor. You betrayed that trust and you betrayed me, Mark." Expression hardened and he leaned forward. "Look, I didn't mean for it to escalate like this. It just happened." "Just happened," I echoed, incredulous. "You think that's an acceptable excuse? You're an adult, Mark. You made a choice." His silence hung heavy in the air and I could see the realization washing over him. He had underestimated the pain he had caused and the fury it had ignited in me. "I never wanted to hurt you," he murmured finally. "It's too late for apologies," I said, my voice steely. "You've already done the damage. You've shattered my family, and I want you to know that I won't just sit back and let this go unpunished." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I'm going to make sure you understand the consequences of your actions. I will tell everyone about what you've done, your clients, your colleagues. I will make sure you lose everything you've built," I replied, the conviction in my words surprising even me. As I walked out of his office, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Confronting him had been cathartic, and though the anger still simmered within me, I also felt a sense of empowerment. I was no longer just a victim. I was taking control of my narrative. When I returned home, I found Laura sitting on the couch, a look of confusion on her face. "Hey, where have you been?" she asked, trying to mask her worry. "I was talking to Mark," I replied flatly, watching her reaction closely. Her eyes widened momentarily, and then she quickly masked it with a defensive demeanor. "What did he say?" "Does it matter? He's betrayed us both." I confronted him about the affair, I stated, my voice steady. "What? You shouldn't have done that." She sounded panicked, which only fueled my resolve. "What do you think this will accomplish? You can't just ruin his career like that." "Why not? He ruined our marriage. He deserves to face the consequences of his actions," I shot back, my anger flaring. "Think about the kids, Jake. This isn't just about us." I felt my jaw tighten. "Don't you dare try to weaponize them against me. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I'm not going to sit back and allow you both to pretend this didn't happen." As I stared at her, I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew I was serious, and for the first time I felt a sense of clarity. I had to protect myself and my family, even if it meant facing the fallout of this confrontation. Laura's facade began to crack as she pleaded, "I can't lose you. I love you. Do you even understand what that word means anymore?" I retorted, my heart aching at the reality of our situation. "You've shattered my trust, and love can't exist without it." The atmosphere in the room became heavy with unsaid words, and I felt the weight of what was to come. I knew I had a long road ahead, a fight to reclaim my life and my family, but I was ready to face it. I wasn't going to let her or Mark dictate the terms of my existence any longer. Little did I know, this confrontation was just the beginning of a complicated journey, one that would take me down a path I never thought I would have to walk. The days following my confrontation with Mark were a blur of chaos and confusion. I had stirred the pot, and now things were boiling over. Laura and I found ourselves in a toxic dance of silence and hostility. The atmosphere in our home was suffocating, with unspoken words hanging in the air, heavy and palpable. I was exhausted, emotionally drained from the constant tension, and I felt like I was on a tightrope, balancing my anger against the lingering love I still had for her. Laura tried to reach out to talk things through, but I found it hard to listen. Every time she opened her mouth, I envisioned her with Mark, laughing, whispering sweet nothings and sharing moments that had once been ours. It disgusted me. I needed space to think, to breathe, so I took the kids out more often, keeping them busy with playdates and weekend activities. They were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between their parents, and I wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. While I was out with the kids, I found solace in the company of my friends. I leaned on them heavily, sharing my story, my pain, and my plans. They offered their support, telling me to focus on myself and the kids, to prioritize my well-being. But each time I recounted the story, it felt slightly different, evolving into a cathartic release of pent-up frustrations. I began to see my situation more clearly, recognizing the depth of Laura's betrayal and how it had fractured my trust. I continued documenting everything in my journal, but I also made a plan. It was a plan that felt right, one that leaned toward taking control of my life. I had already confronted Mark, making it clear I wouldn't let his actions slide without repercussions, and now it was time to confront Laura once more. I needed to lay out the truth, to tell her what I was feeling, and to make it clear that her actions had consequences. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat her down in the living room. The tension was palpable, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us both. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and I could tell she had been crying. Perhaps she was finally starting to understand the gravity of what she had done. "Laura, to talk," I said, my voice steady but calm. She nodded, her expression flickering between fear and hope. "I know things have been rough, but you have to understand, I never meant to hurt you." "Didn't mean to hurt me," I interrupted, feeling anger surging again. "You didn't just hurt me, Laura, you tore apart our family. You betrayed my trust, and I'm left picking up the pieces." She looked down, her fingers fidgeting nervously. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I don't know how it got to this point. It got to this point because you made a choice. You made a choice to go to him instead of talking to me. You chose to have an affair instead of working on our marriage," I said, letting the words sink in. "I'm not here to absolve you of that responsibility. I want you to fully understand the impact of your actions." "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I really do. I was feeling lost, and I didn't know how to reach out." "Feeling lost isn't an excuse to cheat. Laura, you could have come to me and we could have talked about it. Instead, you chose to betray me with someone I trusted," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "I hate myself for what I did," she exclaimed suddenly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought it would be just a fling, something to fill the void, but it spiraled out of control." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "This isn't about filling a void, Laura. This is about the foundation of our marriage crumbling. I feel like I don't even know you anymore. The person I loved would never have done this." She looked at me, desperation etched in her features. "I know I've made mistakes. I want to fix this. I want to make it right." "Do you even think we can fix this?" I asked, my voice softer now. "Do you think it's possible to rebuild what you've shattered?" "I want to try, Jake. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything," she pleaded. "Please don't give up on us." The silence hung heavy between us, and I felt torn. Part of me longed to believe her, to hope we could navigate through this mess together. But another part of me, the part that felt betrayed and wounded, wanted to scream and run away from this nightmare. "Laura, it's not just about what you did, it's about trust," I said finally, my voice breaking slightly. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You've crossed a line that's hard to come back from. I understand that, I really do. But I love you and I'm willing to fight for our marriage. I'd rather die than lose you and the kids," she begged, her sincerity cutting through the tension. The pain in my chest felt like a vice squeezing tighter. Part of me wanted to let her back in, to believe that love could conquer this betrayal. But another part of me screamed that it wasn't that simple. I had witnessed her deception firsthand, and it left scars that wouldn't fade easily. "I need time to think," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just please don't make any rash decisions," she pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want a chance to prove to you that I can change." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle heavily on my shoulders. We sat in silence, both lost in our thoughts. I had no idea how to navigate this. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice. As the night wore on, I knew that I needed to take my time to figure out how to move forward. Whether that meant working on our marriage or forging a new path entirely, it was a decision that weighed heavily on my heart. I had to find clarity in the chaos, and I hoped that, in time, I would discover the strength to make the right choice, whatever that may be. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself in a limbo I never thought I'd experience. Laura was doing everything she could to show me she was committed to repairing our marriage. She suggested therapy, attended counseling sessions without hesitation, and made an effort to communicate more openly. Despite her efforts, I remained guarded, unsure of whether I could truly forgive her. It felt like we were both playing a role in an elaborate charade, her trying to prove her loyalty and love, while I wrestled with my own feelings of betrayal and distrust. I was still heartbroken, and every time I looked into her eyes, I was reminded of the pain she had caused. Meanwhile, the thought of Mark continued to loom large in my mind. I had made good on my promise to confront him, and the desire for revenge had become a burning ember that refused to extinguish. A part of me wanted to expose him, to ensure that everyone knew the truth about the man who had betrayed not just me, but also the trust of countless clients he had worked with. I began to gather evidence, compiling messages and proof of the affair, planning to take action but determined not to rush into it. One evening, while Laura was attending one of her therapy sessions, I met with a close friend, Tom, at our local bar. He had been my confidant through this whole ordeal, and I valued his perspective. I ordered a whiskey, feeling the weight of my choices pressing heavily on my shoulders. "Jake, you've got to do what feels right for you," Tom said as he leaned in. "But you also need to think about your kids. This isn't just about you and Laura anymore." "I know," I replied, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "But how can I trust her again? Every time I think we're making progress, I remember that she chose to betray me. I don't want to put myself or our kids through more pain if this isn't going to work. Have you thought about what moving on looks like?" He asked, his tone serious. "It might be worth considering. If you can't find a way to forgive her, you deserve to be happy." His words struck a chord, and I felt the tension in my chest ease slightly. "I've thought about it, I really have, but I also don't want to be rash. I don't want to make a decision that I'll regret later." "You've got to protect yourself, man. This isn't just about her anymore." Tom leaned back, giving me space to think. "If you feel like you need to confront Mark again, do it. Take control of your narrative." That night, I came home feeling a renewed sense of determination. I realized that I was ready to take the next step, not just for myself, but for the kids. I wasn't going to let Laura's actions define our future. I needed to show her that trust is earned, not freely given, and that I was not going to simply move on without addressing the issue head-on. The following day, I composed myself and prepared to confront Mark once more. I hadn't told Laura of my plan, wanting to keep this decision separate from our ongoing attempts at reconciliation. I felt that this was a necessary step, one that would help facilitate my healing process. I arrived at Mark's office, my heart pounding as I walked through the familiar hallway. This time, I wasn't there just to confront him about the affair. I was there to ensure he understood the weight of his actions and the consequences they would bear. I knocked on his door and he looked up, surprise flashing across his face. "Jake, what are you doing here?" I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. "We need to talk again," I said firmly. "What more is there to discuss?" he replied, attempting to maintain a casual demeanor, but I could see his nervousness seeping through. "I want you to know how your actions have impacted me, my family, and our lives," I began, feeling the anger simmering. "You think it was just some fling, but it was far more than that. You shattered my marriage and betrayed my trust. You need to take responsibility for that." Mark shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I thought what? That it wouldn't matter, that you could just play with people's lives without consequences." I interrupted, my voice rising. "You crossed a line that has consequences, and I'm not going to let you walk away from this unscathed." I reached into my bag and pulled out the evidence I had compiled over the weeks, screenshots of messages, dates, and details of their interactions. I laid them on his desk, watching as his face paled. "Do you see this?" I asked, pointing to the texts. "This is what you've done. This is how you've destroyed my life." I didn't realize it was "That's serious," he stammered, but I could tell he was backpedaling, trying to salvage what was left of his pride. "No, you didn't think at all," I shot back. "And now I have to live with this betrayal. You don't get to just brush it off because it was easier than being honest." Mark looked down, clearly ashamed, and for the first time I saw a glimmer of remorse in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Jake. I never meant to hurt you or your family." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I replied, feeling the power of my words take hold. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows about this. You need to understand the ramifications of your actions. You can't just hide behind apologies and continue your life as if nothing happened." I left the office feeling a mixture of anger and relief. I had confronted him, taken a stand, and made my feelings known. But I also knew this was just one part of a larger journey. Returning home, I felt more resolute than ever, knowing that I was ready to face whatever lay ahead in my marriage with Laura. It would take time, effort, and healing, but I was committed to taking control of my life. As I walked through the door, the familiar chaos of family life enveloped me. The kids were laughing in the living room, their joy a stark contrast to the turmoil I had been navigating. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I needed to focus on my family. The love I had for them was what mattered most. I was determined to find a path forward to rebuild trust and to protect the life we had built, no matter how challenging it might be. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face the future, step by step. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sliver of hope. In the weeks that followed my confrontation with Mark, life took on a new rhythm. I remained committed to focusing on my family and ensuring a stable environment for the kids. It wasn't easy, and the pain of betrayal still lingered, but I began to feel a sense of purpose forming within me. I was no longer just a victim. I was actively choosing to navigate my life with intention. Laura and I continued our therapy sessions, and while the process was slow, I could see glimpses of progress. She worked hard to rebuild my trust, attending every session and demonstrating genuine remorse for her actions. We talked openly about our feelings, our fears, and the cracks that had formed in our relationship. It was painful and raw, but each session brought us a little closer to understanding each other. One evening, as we sat across from each other in our therapist's office, I noticed the vulnerability in Laura's eyes. "I know I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to comprehend," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm trying to understand why I made those choices, and I'm truly sorry. I want to do better for you, for us, and for our kids." Her words struck me, and I could see the sincerity in her expression. It was a small step, but I felt a flicker of hope. "I want to believe you, Laura." "I really do," I admitted, my heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. "But it's going to take time. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm willing to wait. I'll do whatever it takes." We left the session that day with a renewed sense of commitment. I felt a cautious optimism that perhaps, with time, we could rebuild what had been lost. It wouldn't happen quickly or easily, but I was willing to try, and that was a start. As we moved forward, I focused on creating a supportive environment for the kids. I made a conscious effort to engage in family activities, whether it was game nights, movie marathons, or weekend outings. I wanted them to feel safe and cared for, despite the turbulence we were experiencing. I also started to lean more into my friendships, surrounding myself with people who uplifted me and reminded me that I wasn't alone in this journey. But while I worked on our family dynamic, I kept a close eye on Mark. I had made it clear to him that I wouldn't let him get away with his actions, and I felt empowered by my choices. I contacted a local news outlet and shared my story, shedding light on the ethical violations he had committed as a financial advisor. It was a calculated move, one that sent ripples through the community. I never intended to ruin his life, but I wanted him to understand that actions have consequences. As the fallout unfolded, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. I had taken control of my narrative, standing up for my family and ensuring that Mark faced the repercussions of his betrayal. I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Yet, amidst all this, I realized that the healing process for Laura and me was ongoing. There were good days and bad days, ups and downs. I learned to communicate my needs and feelings more openly, and I encouraged her to do the same. We discovered new facets of each other that had been buried beneath resentment and pain. Together, we navigated the complex terrain of rebuilding intimacy and trust. One night, as we sat on the couch watching the kids play, Laura turned to me, her expression softening. "I know we have a long way to go, but I'm grateful you're still here with me, trying," she said, her voice genuine. I took a moment to process her words. "It's not easy, Laura, but I believe in the possibility of healing. It's going to take work on both our parts, and we need to be patient with each other." "I'm ready for that," she affirmed, reaching for my hand. The connection felt tentative but real. I could see hope reflected in her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I felt it within myself too. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was no longer afraid to face them. As I reflected on the path we were on, I recognized the lessons I had learned through this painful experience. Betrayal can fracture even the strongest of bonds, but it can also lead to growth and understanding if both parties are willing to confront their demons. I had learned to stand up for myself, to find my voice, and to prioritize my family's well-being. While the future remained uncertain, I felt a renewed sense of strength and resilience. I was navigating a new chapter in my life, one filled with possibilities for healing, trust, and perhaps love once again. In sharing my story, I hope to inspire others facing similar struggles. Love is not easy, nor is it without its trials, but if both partners are willing to work through the pain, to communicate openly and honestly, there is always a chance for redemption. And as I embraced this journey, I knew that I was finally reclaiming my life, one step at a time.